Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are tuning in. This is Geronda Wallach Spiller with Leading in the Moment with Geronda. So, thank you so much for being here. I know that some of you have been to other talks, maybe you catch the recording. Wherever you are, totally fine, however, you're tuning in. What I'd love for you to do is if you are actually tuning in live, I would love you to put live in the chat. If you are watching the recording, totally cool as well. We will make sure that you are included as well. So we are live now, and thank you so much for being here. I don't usually like to just jump right into the topic. If you're new to joining me in this space, I like to ask a question before I just jump in and say what the topic's actually going to be about. So, the question I have, it's such a good question because this was actually something that was brought up in another space, and the question is, if you have 5 consecutive days off, what would you do? So, if you had 5 consecutive days off, what would you do? And if you don't have those days scheduled, what do you need to get them scheduled? What do you need to actually make them happen? So that's a question I want to share with you, and I'll put it up here as well for anyone who needs the question. So if you had 5 consecutive days off, what would you do? If it's not scheduled, what do you need to do to make it happen? So for me, what I would do with 5 consecutive beautiful, beautiful days off, the weather is actually getting very nice in Seattle, which is exciting. As many of you know, I will be moving to Maine in about less than a week and a half or so. Um, but what I would do is I would go. I love fishing, so I'll go fishing. That's just my jive. To be able to be in a peaceful spot, put on my Beats headphones, do some fishing, have some snacks, and just enjoy the outdoor and nature. And I love movies. I love um, thrillers, especially action thrillers. So my wife is not into that, so I would not involve her in that. But I would just make some time to do that on my own, and I would spend some time with my wife as well. So I love that. I see that. Welcome, Abigail. Welcome, Rachel. Abigail said, "Work around the house or in my personal life." Ooh, that's important. That's important too. I gotta clean my house. I'm not even. This is why I have this beautiful looking house in the background, because if you looked at my house right now, there'd be a lot of judgments going on. Rachel says, "Be spontaneous." Ooh, being spontaneous is so good. I love to be spontaneous sometimes. My wife is really good at that. She'll just say, Let's do this today," and I panic inside, and I'm like, "Ugh, I don't know what we're gonna do. What's the plan?" Blah blah. But it always ends up being the most fun, amazing experience. So I love doing that. So awesome. Thank you so much. So again, if you are tuning in live, please put live in the chat if you are able to. And thank you so much to everyone who answered those questions. I love to just throw a question out there every once in a while. So awesome. So we are going to get into the topic. The topic being effective communication for psychologically safe environments. The importance of effective communication, and a lot of this you'll probably say, "Well, I kind of know this already." Um, I feel like I'm a pretty good communicator with my team or in other spaces. I do feel like there are ways we can have one refreshers, but new ways of thinking and evaluating how effective we are actually being in spaces where we are supporting or managing our team. And so, um, really, for psychological safety, it's leading by example for how you communicate. And to your point, Abigail, when you're thinking about your personal life, how you communicate in those spaces could actually influence how you might communicate to your team or in the workplace. So there's ways to really evaluate that. What I want to start with though is, what is effective communication? I think that many of us know communication can be your voice, it can be body language, but it's really your ability to convey a message that's clearly articulated, um, or clear, and accurately articulated to whoever your intended audience may be. Maybe it's your boss, maybe it's your team, maybe it's a manager. Whatever that might be, you want to think about that intended audience and ensuring that your messaging is clear and it's accurate. So it is using language, your tone, your body language in a way that's actually easily understood. So when I say easily understood, sometimes body language can be a little bit tricky for folks to really understand, or feel like they are using the right body language. So if I'm sitting and my arms are crossed and I'm sitting back, I might be either relaxed, not engaged, or too serious. Leaning forward, I might feel more engaged, and interested in the conversation. So there is interpretation as well on how you use body language, and we're not going to go into how body language affects things in detail today, but it's really thinking about your language and your tone and the body language that you're using. And then active listening, asking questions, and actually giving feedback in a constructive and respectful way so that it's ensuring that the messaging has actually been received and understood. The most important part is understood as well. So you can receive messages all day, but do you fully understand what that message is conveying to you? Do you understand next steps? Do you understand a lot of what this message is conveying? And I want to recognize as well that this month is actually Mental Health Awareness Month. So we have to also think about how effective communication supports mental health and well being. When employees feel comfortable being able to express themselves in a way that they can share their thoughts, share their concerns, share their ideas, they're more likely to have less stress and be able to effectively manage their stress, um, and address their mental health issues. So many of us might say, well, when you are at home, there could be so many things that are happening that are going to impact my mental health or others' mental health. So how can we ensure that they're not going to bring all that to the workplace? We can't ensure that. They likely will bring it to the workplace. I sometimes bring my anxiety to the workplace. But when I'm in an environment where I feel like a lot of that is able to be combated because I'm in this really comfortable environment or environment where I feel I have some safety, I don't feel as anxious. I don't feel as nervous. I don't feel as um, you know put off by a lot of things in the workplace. So I want to share a really quick example, especially around feedback and clarity. So I think a lot of times when we give feedback, we'll just say things like, um, tell me what you did wrong in that moment. So I'll share what I did, what I think I did wrong. Maybe it's I didn't really think about the perspective of customers who are outside of the U.S. or the U.K. or outside of the our natural realm, of where we are as a headquartered in the United States. And then I give the example and they say, yeah, you can do that better next time. I don't know how helpful that is. It's not very clear. What can I do better next time? How could I do it better next time? Could we have a dialogue around it? If the tone of voice um, has been like very aggressive tone, so I start to cower down and I get very nervous. So it's a lot of those different ways where now that I'm anxious, my mental health is being impacted. Um, Even though I shared what I felt I did wrong, the dialogue did not continue in a way that was helpful, constructive, or or in a way that meets the needs of me receiving the communication. And so, really thinking about all of this, I really want to go into some effective types of communication depending on the situation. There's going to be many different situations, but these will help ensure that you are being effective in your communication. And before I do that, I do want to um, just put a quick plug in here. I'll put it in the comments. This is the newsletter that I have for Leading in the Moment, and I will give some tips, advice, things on different topics that I go through for psychologically safe practices for leaders, especially starting with how you can be more aware to provide those types of spaces. So, examples of effective communication. And I would love for you to put the examples in the chat as well, because I want to hear from you in terms of what you feel are examples of effective communication and how we can be better with it. So, one is active listening. Have you ever been, and I'm sure most of you are going to say yes, but have you ever been in a meeting or it's a one on one with your manager, or you're talking to a coworker who's a friend of yours, or wherever the space might be? Maybe it's you and another person, or maybe it's a group or a team call, and you have a couple of people, that one person that keeps looking down and up and down and up. They're likely on their cell phone. Um, this used to happen to me at a prior job I had. It was all the time, and I don't know if this person paid much attention. I started taking pretty copious notes during our one-on-one conversations and started sending the notes over so we were on the same page. And as time went by, there were questions about things that we had discussed very frequently. So it was, oh, did we land on this? Did we land on a decision about this process? Yes, we did. We talked about it in our one-on-one, and I went pretty extensively into that. Um, or did we? And then it would, another week would go by, and it'd be the same question. Did we come across a decision on this process? Yes, it's documented in an email, documented in this place. I talked about it in our one-on-one. We talked about it again in our next one-on-one. So it's giving your full attention. I know that sometimes, for parents or caregivers, your phone has to be available. Something could pop up. I think that's totally fine. I'm a caregiver to my spouse, and so sometimes when I get a buzz on my phone, I'll take a quick look. Nothing urgent. I'm right back. Or if it is something, I say, I'm so sorry to cut you off. Please hold that thought. I have to take this call, or I have to just answer this because it has to do with my spouse. They're pretty much aware that I am a caregiver. I may sometimes have to check my phone, but I'm doing a very quick glance to see if it's anything urgent, and I'm right back to paying attention. If I miss something, apologize and ask to repeat. There is nothing more disrespectful and frustrating and uncomfortable than feeling like you're talking about something and nobody is listening to you. That is really, really rough. So show interest in what they're saying. Um, you know, by nodding, eye contact. Many folks have different um, neurological conditions. Maybe they are ADD, ADHD. Maybe eye contact is challenging, but there are different ways you can show interest. Whether it's if you're looking away and you can't make eye contact, maybe um, you say, oh, that sounds great. Oh, that makes sense. Or even just nodding your head to show that you're paying attention. Now, don't become like the bobblehead nodder where you're just nodding and nodding and nodding and nodding, and you're not paying attention. That's not the intended approach. But also by asking clarifying questions and understanding what the message is by reiterating. And see, I just looked to see if it was something important. And it's not. And by reiterating what that person said, by speaking back on what they said, shows a huge amount of active listening. So somebody says to me, I did this project and I'm running into an issue with the other project manager. This is how I'm going to approach it. I'm gonna say back, okay, well, you worked on this. What I'm hearing is you're on this project, you're having some difficulties with the project manager. This is the approach you're looking to take. Does that sound right? Oh yes, yeah, yeah. How can I support you? So that's super helpful. Another piece that's very helpful is you have to think about the different ways in which people take in information, especially with messaging. So is it clear and concise in your writing, in an email or in a newsletter or in a meeting recap? We have transcripts now for different conversations. Is that something that you're using simple language in? Is it clearly structured to actually convey the message in a way that's easily understood? There's been so many times with so many acronyms and very, very Advanced words were used in documentation that many of us were so put off. We're like, I'm not going to read it. And when we ask for simplicity, it's so much easier to take it in. It's very hard. And when you have those stream of emails that just come through, um, or what I start doing too is that I may give a presentation on something. I will actually present it. I'll record it, give a transcript, or if it's a new process and I have to post it across the company, I may decide also I'm going to I'm going to give this process written down and documented, but I'm going to make a quick little video summary for those who need a visual to actually go through this as well, because a lot of heavy text can be really challenging. So if you're still with me and you're still here, put live in the chat, or put actively listening or hashtag actively listening in the chat, so I know that you're still with me. Another thing is non-body language. I'm sorry, non-verbal communication, which is body language. And what I think is just the best is so many of us do not recognize and cannot control our facial expressions. So I have a thinking face, and it's usually this. And when I'm looking in this way, some people think I am confused or I have a question, I'm not getting something. And I ask people to call me out on that because it's so hard sometimes to recognize that I'm doing that. And I'm just thinking, I'm processing the information. I'm a processor. So you have to say something to me. I likely won't have questions until the end or until you ask me, because I'm still processing in my mind the information. But I have to be careful of my thinking face. Um, this also happened with with another person that I know, where um, I was like, "Do you have a question?" And they didn't have a question, but they were just very engaged, and they wrinkled their eyebrows. A lot of us wrinkle our eyebrows, or we'll squint, or some of us will actually sit like this. So um, we look bored in the conversation. So there's different ways, like starting to ask people to start recognizing and calling out when you do certain things with your body language that can come across in a way that can impact the conversation. So I'm glad that people tell me that, because now I try to keep my hands like this in front of me, so I'm not pulling it up and squinting, and I'm being more mindful of raising my hand or hitting the icon that we have in our. Some people use Zoom, some people use Google Meets. You can use the raised hand icon. I'm working on that. Abigail, you said you have the worst straight face. Uh the word it's so hard. My partner has that too. My partner is so engaged in the conversation, but she's taking a lot of it in as well. She is a person with autism, and so she's very focused, and she is very good with eye contact. So it looks like she's zoning out and not listening, but she really is engaged in the conversation. So it's just, I think it's just a funny situation how our faces morph themselves to really engage in conversation. Um, the next one is open and honest feedback. A lot of this can be hard. A lot of times you want the specifics. I've gotten feedback where it was just, when you cut that person off in a conversation, that was irritating. Like, well, what conversation? What was irritating about it? Did anyone else say it was irritating? How can I improve upon it? That just adds so many more questions. So a different way that it could have been approached was, when you interrupted such and such in our conversation earlier today about this particular project, it made it seem like you were not being a team player, because you were actually not allowing them to finish their really great thought and idea. How did you interpret this conversation? So that is so different, because I know what the meeting is. I know who I interrupted. I know the impact of that interruption, and I can actually share how I perceived it to be. So we can have a dialogue and conversation, a conversation around this. And it's so helpful when you do it that way, instead of trying to really just say things that are just so short and just are not constructive or helpful. And again, you have to be aware of how you might be in that moment or on that day. You might have had a horrible fight at home with your partner, or you might have had heard really bad news about your child or your family or your friend or whatever, or you're just having a hard time. So maybe you're really sad and you're depressed and what have you. uh, Recognizing that, I think being aware and saying, this is, I'm having a bad day, or this is what's going on. Vulnerability is fine, because then you can say, can we have this conversation later or another time? Now, you don't ever want to make somebody wait for days and days and weeks upon end, because the worst thing that you can do, which has happened to me so many times, is send an email that says, or ping someone and say, "Hey, are you available?" And then and then you don't, one that just sends a stress signal of, oh, automatically you're starting to think I did something wrong, something's terrible. And then if you're not available, it's like, oh, okay, well, let's talk about it on Friday, which is like 2 days from now. I'm going to be ruminating on that for 2 days. Or I've had managers do that to me, and then they went on vacation for 2 weeks. And I'm sitting there like, what did I do? So, as much as you can, give it in real time, as we all keep hearing. But I don't think that we can get better at this if we're not truly self-aware of the things that we do. And oftentimes we need that reminder. We need people to hold us accountable. We need people to be able to tell us what we are doing that's impacting them, to be able to improve in these areas. And it really starts with how we communicate with people and give an environment where people can speak to us. And really make it collaborative. So that's going into my next point. When you make it collaborative, you're really working together to share ideas and problem solve, and maybe it's speaking up, for your needs, or even how you best communicate together. Allow that space for feedback to be given to you on how you communicate. And it's okay. I've had people tell me, sometimes, John, I don't think you're paying attention because you keep looking down. And that's when I kept looking down at my phone and thinking like, oh, something's going to happen. So I made it a point where I'm going to just look at it only if I see something pop up, or I'm not going to turn my camera off in this meeting that's very important, so I can go on TikTok or Instagram while someone's talking and not be present and engaged. That's another thing. So I say that because if you do need to turn off your camera, which happens, sometimes you can't be have your camera on at all times. If your camera is off, there are ways to also show that you're engaged. There's, if you use Zoom, there's different emoji reactions. If you use Google Meets, there's different emoji reactions. There's the comment boxes that says, yes, I agree. There's, your camera may not be on, but you can unmute yourself and you can speak, and you can still say, oh, yes, I get that. And you can still show that you're engaged even when your camera's off. When your camera's off and you're completely silent the entire time, and the other person's just talking, it's so hard to know if someone's actually listening to you. And imagine you put so much time and effort and energy into presenting something, or you've built the courage to give feedback to somebody, or you've even built the courage to share something that you need for yourself, and that person is completely zoned out and not paying attention. What's even worse is if you have to disclose something that's happening in your life and you want it to be known to your manager who isn't listening, and you have to repeat that trauma or repeat that thing that's happening. How uncomfortable and frustrating and disrespectful does that feel? It sucks. It sucks. So be there, be present, get feedback, take an inventory. My action I want to leave with each of you today. And before I do that, I'm going to put one more plug in here for this newsletter that you can join, in order to get more of these tidbits. But the action I want to leave you with today is, I really want you to take time, and I want you to document moments where you wish you were better in your communication. So what I mean by that is moments where you were better speaking to somebody. Maybe you weren't as clear or as direct or as respectful. And moments where you felt like you weren't as engaged. Also, I want you to really reflect on your body language. ask for that buddy or that person to call you out on it. It's not to make you feel bad about it. It's not to make you feel like, oh, why is her face like that? Like, no one's saying anything in that way. It's more of when you are doing this type of body language, it's coming across in this way. And also, like, get some feedback on the tone that you use. Maybe you come across sometimes a little agitated or aggressive. Um, that's important for you to know too. Sometimes we're human beings. We're gonna get stressed. We're gonna get upset. We're gonna kind of bring our challenges and things that we're going through to work sometimes. I've gotten really pissed off and was like, oh, like, why the hell is this not working? And I've said that to somebody, like, why is this so hard to understand? And I felt horrible. But I started reflecting, and they were nice enough to give me feedback, and we had a very collaborative conversation about it, and I was like, I was going through a lot at the time with my spouse's health and the insurance company, and things were just not working out. So I projected and I took it out on that person. So do the reflection. I would love for you, if you are feeling vulnerable, I'd love for you to email me. um, I'm going to put it up here. I would love for you to email me and tell me how this reflection goes for you. It can be, um, oops, here we go. That's my email address. So tell me how it goes. Was it uncomfortable? Did you learn things that you didn't even realize that you learned about yourself from people? If maybe you're kind of still developing that space of vulnerability with your team, be this is going to sound like a catch 22, but be vulnerable in saying, I really need this and I want to be effective. Can you give me more of this? And with the expectation, I'm not going to get upset. I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to do anything that's going to harm you. I'm not going to retaliate against you. um, but this is going to be helpful to me as your manager or as your leader. So if you are willing to do that, put a yes in the comments that you are going to do this action. You're going to email me just how the experience went. You don't even have to give me detail if you don't want to, but hey, I spoke to my team. They gave me really great feedback. It was super well received. I was grateful for this. Or hey, I spoke to my team. I'm actually feeling kind of crappy because there are things I didn't realize, but I really am going to work on them. Um, please do that for me and put yes in the chat if you are willing and able to do that. So with that, thank you so much, everyone. Really, this is a very important month. I focus on mental health quite a bit, but mental health awareness month is super critical as somebody who has anxiety. um, and it's important. It affects my leadership style and my leadership ability, but I'm very honest with folks about it because I think it's incredibly important. So you can tune in for the next Leading in the Moment. That's going to be happening on the 17th of May, always at 12 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we are going to focus on mental health in the workplace and how do you address mental health with especially a lot of what's going on globally around the world. So I will see you next time, May 17th. More will be posted on LinkedIn for that next meeting. I appreciate you joining me. And with that, I hope you have a great day, great weekend, a great afternoon, wherever you are and wherever you're tuning in from. And with that, I will say peace.